And we will begin the largest deportation operation in the history of the United States. We will defend our territory. We will not be conquered. We will not be conquered.
Quick arrests, quicker removals. Millions wanted it, millions voted for it.
We will be very, very effective in doing it.
And remove the government has now done hundreds of thousands of times.
It's going to happen very, very fast. We're going to get them the hell out of our country.
The fulfillment of a campaign promise made and kept. This is not what we sought to investigate.
We don't know the rhyme or reason for it, honestly.
A lot of, I think, what we're seeing over the past year is just chaos.
Somewhere between arrest and removal, we found something else. At some of the nation's busiest airports, a massive immigration enforcement operation takes place daily, just beyond the next gate.
It's astounding, just the number of people that are moved daily.
These flights don't leave America. They cross it.
People are being treated like Amazon packages, kind of just shuffled about.
I had a client detained in Maryland who ended up in Louisiana, then in Texas, then finally to Tacoma, where I met her.
Buried within millions of lines of data, we found the routes, the airports, and in some instances,
you had no idea where you were going.
No.
the passengers themselves.
Me llevaron a Denver, Colorado.
Flights filled with people not headed to other countries, but to other states.
Gracias.
And often, it's not clear why.
Y cuando nos subieron en el avión, yo no vi nada. Nos fuimos de ahí, pero no sabíamos para dónde. Yo no sabía para dónde íbamos.
A billion-dollar-plus interstate system few know exists.
Huge amounts of funding from the U.S. government are going in with very little oversight.
And they're shuffled around not just to one facility, but multiple facilities across the country.
Do you get the sense some judges are growing frustrated by this?
Absolutely.
Where leaders promise speed, efficiency, and scale, we found movement, confusion, and secrecy.
They could literally be moved overnight and I won't know.
And sometimes even those who try to leave, who want to leave,
He should have been deported, right?
somehow don't.
You thought he was ready to go back to Nicaragua.
Sí.
This is what happens when a system designed to remove simply moves people around.
So we're not really any closer to knowing what happened.
This is Ice Air. They cross American skies over cities big and small. Every day the planes move thousands from one spot in the U.S. to another. To understand how it works, we decided to follow one plane on one day. Multiple stops, multiple locations, multiple crews.
People don't realize what's happening in our community.
Our day started in eastern Ohio,
People don't feel it, they don't see it.
in Youngstown.
This is what our country is doing. This is what's happening.
This 737, operated by Eastern Air Express, is one part of a massive ice air fleet.
They have progressively moved the planes behind the airport.
Here, we met Chris Harris, part of an informal national network of observers who document the flights.
And at this point now, they're pulling the loading ramps to block any kind of visuals.
On its webpage, Immigration and Customs Enforcement says that detainees may be transferred to other facilities to eliminate overcrowding or meet special detainee needs.
2 flights a day, leaving Youngstown in the morning.
We don't know who boarded this flight or why they boarded. ICE will not discuss ongoing or future operations, citing security concerns. We do know, based on our reporting, this flight went by the flight number Tyson 57. We know that because we built our own database using downloadable but little-known flight information to find the flights and planes used by ICE air operations. From Ohio, Tyson 57 traveled east to Bedford, Massachusetts.
If you told me a year ago that I'd be doing this, I would say you're crazy.
This is where Todd Palmer, another observer, waited. He understands more than most. ICE doesn't like to advertise where it goes.
What we're seeing here is a piece of a nationwide, giant-scale secret operation whisking people around the country and then out of the country.
Much like celebrities or wealthy jet setters who want to keep their travels private, ICE uses a federal system known as LAD, or Limiting Aircraft Data Displayed, to remove many of its flights from many flight tracking websites. They're not invisible to radar, but if you looked up this plane on flightaware.com on this day, for example, you would have never seen it, and thus would have missed its third stop in Indianapolis, Indiana. Here, another crew of ours recorded detainees boarding Tyson 57 in leg and arm shackles. ICE calls the restraints standard protocol and an essential measure to ensure the safety and well-being of both detainees and officers' agents accompanying them.
We're just seeing that these flights are kind of crisscrossing our country.
Savi Arvi works for Human Rights First, an immigrant advocacy group that monitors what some call shuffle flights, these domestic-only transfers.
Everyone should care about these flights in particular.
She worries flights intended to assist with deportation also appear to be doing something else.
The flights within the United States often shuffle people between detention centers and deportation facilities, sometimes with little explanation.
These aren't just city-by-city pickups of prisoners, she says. To her, it's a deliberate government plan to play keep away.
And I think there are great concerns that these flights are then taking people away from their attorneys.
When it comes to ICE air operations, no place plays a larger role than Alexandria, Louisiana, a town of less than 50,000 that sits in a parish that voted 2-1 in favor of President Donald Trump.
Just a lot of people feel that this is what they voted for, so they're pleased.
She doesn't want us to use her name, mostly because of where she lives and what she does.
They will open the doors and all these people will start pouring out in shackles and just like shuffling. You'll see them line up and they just keep coming.
This is the nation's busiest ICE air hub. It sits just beyond the back nine of the Oak Wing Golf Club.
You can come out here any day of the week and you're going to witness flights.
On this day, it was also Tyson 57's fourth stop. One flight, one day, 2,000 miles, dozens of detainees picked up and shipped to the south. Every stop raised the same questions. Who was ICE moving and why? In 2023, the then acting ICE director in front of Congress estimated these charter flights run $17,000 an hour. This day's journey, 7 hours. By that estimation, $119,000 from start to finish. And Tyson 57 was hardly alone that day. We identified, tracked, traced 65 flights in all. A vast daily network few know, and even fewer understand.
People deserve to know what happens to them, not to disappear into the black hole.
And most of these flights, as you can see, never left the country.
It's not like anything I've ever seen before.
Yo soy de Cuba y llevo casi 5 años en los Estados Unidos.
Why did you want to come to the States?
Vine buscando libertad, vine buscando un sueño, salir de un país con persecución.
In South Florida, U.S. Highway 1 forms the spine of the Florida Keys. For most, it's a path to paradise. For a man named Yanier, In late 2025, it was anything but.
Yo vine por libertad y se me acabó en ese momento. De hecho, el día que me detuvieron me dijeron que le pregunté por qué me estaban detuviendo y me dijeron así que su presidente decía que yo era un criminal.
Neither he nor this man, who doesn't want us to use his name,
Where are you from?
Yo soy de Cuba.
neither, according to filings in federal court, has a criminal record in the United States. Florida State Patrol stopped both while the two were headed to a job.
Yo pensaba que cuando el presidente decía que iban a hacer redadas masivas era hacia, no sé, hacia los delincuentes, hacia las personas que tenían causas y delitos, algo así, pero no como nosotros que somos personas de trabajo, de casa, de familia.
Weeks after their arrests and while in Miami, the U.S. government put the two on a plane.
Pensé que ya se había acabado el sueño, que ya me iban a devolver para Cuba.
You had no idea where you were going?
No.
And you just get a notification that they're being moved, but the notification doesn't say where they're being moved to. You just know they're getting moved.
Even their attorneys did not know where they were headed.
We had no idea they were being moved until it happened.
Only later did they find out the flight headed not south, but 1,700 miles west and north to a detention center in a city neither had seen, much less visited.
Me llevaron a Denver, Colorado.
Fue difícil porque las personas que vivían en Colorado los podía visitar la familia, los podían ver generalmente todos los días. Y al moverme, pues yo no tenía nada de eso. Era más difícil, las llamadas eran más difíciles, había pocos medios para comunicarse.
The flight they took, our investigation found it. Flight number GXA 6181, an Airbus 320 operated by Global X. How we found that is a story in and of itself.
Flight 493, service to Las Vegas, here at A15. Passengers with disabilities, you're welcome to pre-board.
Denver International is one of the country's busiest airports. Here, the shuttle flights blend in.
Military, you're welcome to pre-board. We thank you for your service.
Of the 80 million who will fly in and out this year, few will notice the scale of the operation.
Global service customers, you're welcome to pre-board.
We see people being sent here from all over the country.
Attorney Jess Doggett represents detainees, many of whom came to Colorado from other states.
I think at worst it's clandestine. I think it is a very complicated network and system that probably is very difficult to track and run because of the sheer number of people they have detained right now.
Difficult to track, but as our investigation found, not impossible. It started with data, a massive amount. In Denver alone, we downloaded and analyzed more than 1.5 million flights in and out dating back to the start of 2024. From there, we looked for patterns, recurring routes, connecting cities with major ICE detention centers, aircraft making the same trips week after week. Then came another clue, the flight numbers. ICE Air and its charter companies often use recurring identifiers, Tyson 53, LYM 500, for example. Individually, they prove nothing. Together, they formed that pattern. Using that methodology, we identified 91 planes operated by 8 different companies, carrying out what we believe to be the bulk of ICE Air's domestic flight network.
We're following a flight that left Phoenix about 8:20 this morning that I believe is heading to Denver.
With that narrowed down list, investigative producer Chris Hansen spot-checked flights we believed were part of ICE Air operations.
Largely, I think people are unaware of how often these flights are actually occurring.
Patterns, numbers, clues.
They had flights coming into Denver on the 1st, the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, the 29th, and now today, the 5th.
It all added up to a system.
We're at DIA, the plane came, stopped here.
A system that allowed us to find flights like this one. VXP-52. A 737 operated by, at least at the time, Avelo Airlines.
They're being searched, and now they're going up and boarding the plane. Take off, probably heading west to California, based on what we've seen previously.
These spot checks took our team of reporters.
Looks like they should be getting here in about an hour.
To airports like the one in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
So that is Tyson 46.
With our data, we identified and recorded ICE air operations at 18 airports in all, in and around cities like Phoenix, Dallas, Buffalo, Baltimore, Jacksonville, Tampa, and yes, Miami, where we traced GXA 6181 and its flight to Denver. Why Denver? We don't know. ICE won't say. We do know there's a large private ICE detention facility near Denver, and like many cities, it has seen a massive jump in ICE air flights. In the first 4 months of 2024, we identified 26 ICE air flights in and out of Denver. In the first 4 months of 2026, 103.
Tu vida se desborona, todos los sentimientos decaen, encima lo pierdes todo.
In early 2026, federal judges found problems with the way ICE handled the cases of these two. One judge ruled Yanier had been improperly detained, adding the federal government failed to follow its own regulations in how it arrested and detained him. 3 months after GXA 6181 left Miami, ICE released Yanier just in time for him to watch his daughter's first dance recital in Florida.
What's her name?
Gisela.
How old is she?
3 years.
Your first?
Yeah. Pensar en ella, saber que podía estar con ella otra vez era lo único que pensaba. Pero nunca pensé en salir, que pensé que podía salir. Nunca pensé que volvía a salir de ahí. Y cuando se acercó el tiempo que la abogada me dijeron que me habían dado la orden del juez, no me lo creía.
There is little doubt that in early 2026, in one of the coldest of America's largest cities,
they were just sitting in their car.
Long simmering tensions over immigration boiled over.
They couldn't get the first person, so they came over here and smashed the window and pulled them out.
To hear federal leaders tell it, Operation Metro Surge in Minneapolis did what it was supposed to do.
I have announced effective immediately, we will draw down 700 people effective today.
Arrest, detain, transfer. ICE did this by our count 2,549 times, arguing in court filings its main processing facility, located in Minnesota's Fort Snelling, was meant solely for short-term confinement, while detainees awaited transfer to other ICE detention facilities. We identified 128 flights in and out of Minneapolis during the height of Metro Surge, flights in from states like Louisiana, Texas, Arizona, Ohio, and Wisconsin. Flights out, almost always, to one place, El Paso, Texas.
We do think it is a part of a planned effort to get them out of state as quickly as possible.
Minnesota-based attorney Brian Plaster marveled and bristled at the pace of the departures.
It's almost immediate in many cases. We have people picked up off the street, on the way to work, from their home, from dropping children off to school, and they're taken, put into an ICE vehicle, taken right to MSP, processed and put onto a flight to Texas within a matter of hours.
That was absolutely what happened to T. Dua Vang.
Cho cháu mình nhỏ trên thành nhỏ cho tới chuyện này của một cô yêu chẳng ở luôn này nó cũng sang hiện tại.
Less than 24 hours after her arrest, ICE put her on a plane. We found it, GXA 6142, Minneapolis to Omaha. From Omaha, it continued south to El Paso under a slightly different flight number, GXA 6143. Days later, ICE sent her to Houston. She assumed she was bound for Vietnam. Instead, late one night, after a judge ordered a bond hearing, ICE released her. She then waited in the dark alone for hours before her family finally picked her up.
I definitely think that there is a lot of strategy on ICE's part to make it more difficult for people to exercise their rights.
Jenny Pasquarella is an attorney based in Washington State. She says in order to understand what she believes is taking place, you must first understand the concept of habeas corpus.
Habeas corpus is a Latin term that means show me the body. So it is a really core element of our legal system. It allows a person to say, I'm being held unlawfully. Government or whoever is holding that person respond and justify the legality of this detention.
She's talking about due process, and yes, no less than the U.S. Supreme Court has said even people born outside of the U.S. remain entitled to it. As the ICE flights increased, so too did the habeas filings seeking due process.
So it's really having an important role in this moment. Lawyers all over the country have stepped up to learn how to do habeas cases, file them, and fight for the rights of people who are being unlawfully detained.
Take Minnesota. In a federal court database, we found 6 habeas filings in the first 4 months of 2024, 4 during the same period in 2025. In 2026, 1,175.
I've seen some clients that have gone to 4 or 5 different states before hiring me and me being able to get an order precluding their continued transfer until we resolve the habeas petition.
Critically, when it comes to habeas petitions, each must be filed in the state where the detainee is held.
So if my client in Colorado, for example, is transferred to Mississippi, I'm not licensed to practice in the courts in Mississippi, and I'd have to find another attorney there to help me, and that complicates the process a lot.
ICE maintains it moves detainees based on bed space, medical needs, and other factors. A spokesperson also said it is working rapidly and overtime to remove. But a judge appointed by President Trump said in February of 2026, the quick ICE flights out of Minnesota all but extinguish a detainee's access to counsel and create barriers that make it difficult, if not impossible, for attorneys to effectively represent their clients.
I do think there are some people are being sent to other states in order to frustrate legal defenses and their ability to fight their immigration cases.
And where ICE sends someone matters. In early 2026, a federal appeals court ruling covering Mississippi, Louisiana, and yes, Texas, expanded the federal government's authority to hold some immigrants without bond hearings. Lawyers we spoke to say it raises questions about where detainees are sent.
That part, I think, also is intentional to move people to places that are more hostile courts and are less likely to release them.
It's the same process the whole time. They pull up, they park at Signature Aviation over there, the private jet terminal. The convoy arrives, they pull up the steps so the people can get on and off. They do a security pat down, and they are led onto the airplane, they hobble on. The airplane's about to touch down here.
Nick Benson documented most of the ICE flights in and out of MSP in Minneapolis during Metro Surge.
We can't trust the federal government to provide transparency on what's going on.
And so he saw on the ground what we found in judicial rulings on hundreds of habeas petitions filed on behalf of people arrested in Minnesota and sent to Texas. We found these words to be common: immediately return and effectuate release forthwith. We counted at least 288 detainees ordered returned to Minnesota by federal judges.
It's up to us, the people and the press, to document what's going on at these airports, because this isn't just a Minnesota problem.
Looking for proof that not all removals are lawful, we found El Paso-bound AWI 7181. We saw 24 board. The following day, at least one of the 24 headed back. Using data from the Deportation Data Project, we found him on Minneapolis-bound Tyson 46, and he wasn't alone. We counted 32 detainees returned that day, each the subject of a judicial order ordering them back to Minnesota.
We're on a tempo where there are 2 flights a week now, down from 2 or 3 flights a day during the peak of Metro Surge.
Benson is still documenting the flights, even as they've slowed. As for ICE, by spring of 2026, it was ordered by a judge not to remove within 72 hours of arrest. The judge wrote in this ruling, and in no uncertain terms, due process is not a game of keep away. As we followed the flights and logged the journeys, one destination demanded a closer look. Tucked among the trees of southwest Mississippi.
Lots of questions, very little answers.
The Adams County Correctional Center sits hundreds of miles from the nation's southern border and more than 1,000 miles from Colorado, where Delvin Francisco Rodriguez was arrested. So why did he end up here, dead?
Entonces lo que nosotros queremos es una respuesta. ¿Qué pasó? ¿Qué orilló a que pasara eso?
Delvin's sisters don't want us to show their faces or use their names. They know they too face deportation. They say their brother was low-key and generous.
Lo vamos a recordar como una persona humilde, una persona trabajadora. Él nos brindaba mucho apoyo a nosotras, sus hermanas. Y no solamente a nosotros, le brindaba la mano a las personas sin pedir nada a cambio.
ICE arrested Rodriguez in Summit County, Colorado, September 25, 2025. ICE then held him in the privately run Aurora ICE Processing Center near Denver. In October, ICE's own records show he agreed to leave the U.S. His deportation fight was over.
Our understanding is that Delvin made the choice to sign a self-deportation document.
Alex Sanchez heads Voces Unidas, a nonprofit that works with immigrants.
He should have been deported, right? He did agree that, or he did sign willingly that he wanted to self-deport after receiving, legal counsel.
More weeks, more time in custody in Colorado. No removal, no explanation why. In late November, weeks after he agreed to leave, ICE air operations began. VXP-52 operated by Avello, Denver, then west to Las Vegas, then south to Phoenix. The following day, Rodriguez boarded another plane, Tyson 42, operated by Eastern Air Express, Phoenix to Alexandria, Louisiana. Days later, he arrived here, the Adams County Correctional Center near Natchez, Mississippi, operated by CoreCivic. It is one of the nation's largest ICE detention facilities.
La última llamada la tuve el 4 de diciembre. Él quería saber que por qué tanto tiempo lo tenían en detención, que por qué nunca lo mandaban para Nicaragua, y también me preguntaba que averiguara sobre sus pertenencias, ¿verdad? Eso fue lo que hablamos el 4 de diciembre. Luego de ello, pues yo lo noté bien, tranquilo, no pasaba nada. Me dijo, te llamo mañana.
The call never came. In a one-page report I submitted to Congress, 2 words, attempted suicide. Days later, he died. One of 31 people to die in ICE custody in 2025, the deadliest year since ICE started reporting deaths to Congress in 2018.
You thought he was ready to go back to Nicaragua?
Sí.
Sí.
No más verlo, que estaba hospitalizado, y decir lo que está ahí, que nos dijeran en el hospital, lo que está ahí ya no tiene vida, él no está ahí, desconéctenlo. Es como decir, es un pedazo de carne, hay que deshacernos de él. Eso es muy duro.
Rodriguez's arrest record, according to ICE, 2 traffic-related offenses, failure to appear on a careless driving ticket and driving without a license. He wanted to leave the country. Instead, ICE kept moving him around it.
If deportation is the goal, then there's no reason for people to be shuffled across the country or to be detained for longer than they need to be, and they should just be able to go home.
Jasmine Chavez teaches race and the law at Metropolitan State University of Denver. She says whether intentional or not, the decision to keep moving people like Rodriguez has a net impact on the system as a whole.
I think part of this is cruelty, to be honest, right? I think cruelty is part of the point here, and disorienting both detainees and families and discouraging them from wanting to move forward, wanting them to get released, ideally to be able to self-deport, and also scare other people in terms of what happens to you if you're detained.
ICE says its detention is non-punitive as it acknowledges transfers happen, calling its detainees one of the most highly transient populations of any detention system in the world. The more we looked, the more evidence of that we found.
Yo creo que como 15 años.
What did it mean to be here?
Significa un lugar libre, te sientes seguridad, te sentías seguridad.
Decades into their American life, a traffic stop in West Palm Beach, Florida,
7 meses y medio.
set Moises and his wife Caterina on a journey neither expected.
Y de repente que vimos unos aviones moviendo de ahí y después se movió el autobús donde íbamos y nos llevaron en ese avión, pero no sabíamos para dónde.
Tyson 53 started in Miami. From there it headed more than 800 miles north and west to Alexandria, Louisiana.
Eso es lo que fue esos tiempos. Muy duro para mí. No es fácil. No fue fácil.
Caterina got off the plane. ICE held her there in Louisiana. Not so for her husband.
Y yo dije, pero mi esposo, ¿dónde está? ¿Dónde está mi esposo? No puedo saber nada de mi esposo. No sé dónde está. No lo miré mi esposo. Y nos dejaron ir al baño. Y ya después me quedé en la orilla de la silla. Y yo estaba pensando de mi esposo, ¿dónde está mi esposo?
It hurts when I know that I don't even have time to go visit my client here, because by the time I'm ready to make the arrangements to go down somewhere, they're not there anymore.
Jan Peter Weiss represents both Moises and Caterina. He says what happened to them happens a lot.
I can only say that I've had clients that are relocated when they're picked up in Florida, a minimum of to 2 different areas, sometimes 3, sometimes more. 99% of the times, we don't know and we have no information. 90% of the time, we will contact an officer at a facility where our client's supposed to be, and we don't get information. The other 10%, we get lucky.
It's harder not only for the family to track them, but even for lawyers.
Andres Iman also represents the couple and is very familiar with these types of stories.
They could literally be moved overnight and I won't know. The government, again, will argue it's national security, so they can't tell you. For example, I've shown up to hearings on Zoom or WebEx, and the judge will be like, sorry, your client's not here anymore. I'm telling that they've been moved, and I don't even know.
Ultimately, both Weiss and Amon found what we found. From Alexandria, ICE Air's Tyson 53 continued flying 1,400 more miles west, over Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, before finally taking Moises to Victorville, California.
Pero no podía yo comunicar con mi familia, estaba preocupada por mi esposa, por mis hijos, y porque no sabían dónde yo estaba.
His wife remained in Louisiana for a month. She returned to Florida on a bus after a judge said ICE could no longer legally hold her. It took much longer for a judge to say the same about Moises.
Moises!
On January 15th of 2026, 7 months into his detainment, Moises walked out of the Desert View Annex in Adelanto, California.
Ahora sí, ¿eh?
Both are now back in Florida and living in a home much different than the one they left.
Es muy difícil, porque toda la familia que tengo ya no se sale ya no se puede salir afuera, ya no pueden llevar los niños en un parque, están cerrados en las casas.
And while one family made it home, another still waits.
Queremos justicia, la verdad, por él, y que sea lo que Dios permita, la verdad. Estamos en manos de él, la verdad, en manos de Dios.
In November of 2025, Democratic members of Congress authored this letter to ICE, saying deaths like Rodriguez's raise serious questions about ICE's ability to comply with basic detention standards, as it underscores a pattern of gross negligence.
And I think that's part of the lack of transparency that
ICE has pursued in this entire terrible episode.
Their Democratic colleague, Senator Michael Bennet from Colorado, says ICE isn't just answering the questions of the Rodriguez family. It's not answering his questions as well.
I mean, honestly, we're not really any closer to knowing what happened to Mr. Rodriguez and why he ended up in that prison in Mississippi anyway.
We know because we looked. ICE wasn't short of options or flights. We found one plane, an Airbus 321, traveled from Alexandria to Nicaragua weekly, all while Rodriguez waited for one to send him home. Senator Bennet says what we found to date suggests his colleagues have more work to do.
You know, I think what you're going to discover that's going to come as a surprise to the Congress is how large and how expensive this air fleet is, and just how often these flights are going around the country without anybody really thinking through the logistics of where they're ending up.
It sounds simple.
Everyone that Biden let in has to go home.
Arrest, detain, remove.
We're going to use the entire force and power of the federal government to get them all home.
Process repeated hundreds of thousands of times since the start of 2025.
But we are not going to ask taxpayers to subsidize the presence of a single illegal alien in this country.
But sometimes, in the moments between arrest and removal, things get complicated.
A lot of, I think, what we're seeing over the past year is just chaos.
Immigration attorney and law professor Niels Frenzen says, look no further than a nondescript ICE office near Denver and a 2026 visit here by a family of 6.
We were told that there was going to be some paperwork that was done and that this check-in at Centennial would take 20 or 30 minutes. And then at some point, we realized the family had been taken out another door.
Out the back door and into the ICE air network.
We did not know if they were on an ICE detention flight with 50 other people and if they were just being moved around.
At that moment, a team of lawyers across the country scrambled to figure out where ICE was taking them.
It was a race against the clock because we needed to have that habeas petition filed before the plane left Denver.
To understand what happened there, you must first understand this. The routes, the transfers, the constant movement. Before many detainees ever leave the country, ICE shuffles them across it.
People are being treated like Amazon packages, kind of just shuffled about and then flown out of this country.
Savi Arvi with Human Rights First knows these flights are often less understood within the national debate. It's why our investigation focused on them.
We're following a flight that left Phoenix about 8:20 this morning that I believe is heading to Denver.
Remember VXP 52, one of the first flights we tracked?
This flight should load up and within an hour and a half, take off, probably heading west to California.
In Denver, we counted 49 detainees boarding, 45 men, 4 women. Every one we identified not by name, but by number of transfers. Using federal detention data from the Deportation Data Project, we traced all of them. 1, a Colombian man moved 12 times over the course of 1 month. In Victorville, California, 36 boarded the same plane, one of whom ICE moved 13 times. In San Diego, 8 boarded. 1, an Ecuadorian man, moved 9 times. Across the U.S., the shuffles happen constantly and sometimes inexplicably. Cuban man arrested in South Florida, June 2025. Miami, Denver, Florence, Denver, Florence, Denver, Florence, Denver, Florence. Venezuelan man arrested in Tampa, December 2025. Miami, El Paso, Mesa, Denver, Mesa, Again, ICE won't comment on its routes, on its movements, citing operational security.
We're just going to continue to see more and more flights, unfortunately.
Arvey says the network's complexity makes it difficult to understand and oversee.
Huge amounts of funding from the US government are going in with very little oversight. They're operating through all of these subcontractors, which again makes it harder and more confusing to follow. It's not like one airline is carrying this out, it's a whole network.
And that is how ICE Air runs, not under its own banner. In our own database, we found these subcontractors flying: Eastern Air Express, Key Lime, Global X, Avelo, Omni Air International, Journey Aviation, Bighorn Airways. At the center, a company with a name you won't see painted on the planes: CSI Aviation. It really isn't an airline, it's much more a broker. When ICE wants a flight here or there, CSI helps arrange it. Its contracts with Homeland Security saw a big boost in 2023 before the current administration. Every year since then, it secured more contracts and more money, much of it to move people quickly. USAspending.gov shows if all goes according to plan, Homeland Security's latest contract with CSI Aviation will pay the Texas-based company $1.5 billion by October of 2027.
You know, the air movement of people is money to be made.
Money to be made. Which brings us back to Colorado, the day after a man named Mohammed Solomon firebombed a peaceful pro-Israel protest in Boulder, injuring many and ultimately killing one. The White House went after Solomon's family. 6 one-way tickets for Mohammed's wife and 5 kids. Final boarding call coming soon, read this post on X. For 10 months, while the family appealed their detainment, ICE kept the Egyptian family here. Dilley Immigration Processing in South Texas, one of the largest family detention centers in the U.S. Investigators believe there is zero indication the family knew anything about the Boulder attack beforehand. Here, the family waited until a judge issued this order.
The district court ordered the family released that afternoon. They spent the night in San Antonio, and supporters of the family started driving them up to Colorado Springs.
2 days later, Hayam El-Gamal and her 5 kids checked in here, the ICE office near Denver, for what was supposed to be that simple, routine, 20 to 30 minute in and out in Centennial, Colorado.
Do you feel like what happened in Centennial was planned?
Absolutely. You know, this was a plan. There's no doubt.
And now we can report this. Hours before the meeting, ICE already had that plan and a plane in place. The night before, ICE Air sent one from El Paso to Denver under the flight number AWI 7418, a 2002 CRJ-200 once owned by Air Wisconsin, then run by CSI Aviation.
The plane is fueled, there's a crew, there are, you know, guards on the plane. None of this, you know, could have happened with a few hours of planning. The plane was positioned and ready to go, and ICE had a plan.
As Frenson and others raced to get a judge to rule on their habeas petition filing, the plane took off under a new flight number we found, AWI 7128.
We see that it's flying to one of the airports outside of Detroit.
After it landed in Michigan, it took off again and headed east under another flight number, AWI 7228.
We assume that the plan was then to fly from New Jersey, probably to Egypt.
A plane built to fly 50, flown across the country with only one family on board. On this leg, with the plane in the air, a federal judge in Denver finally said when it comes to Hayam El-Gamal and her kids, the U.S. government shall not remove. The only question then, would the U.S. government comply?
And then ultimately, as we saw on the flight tracker, the plane did an 180-degree turn in the air.
We saw it too. AWI 7228 in the air, back to Michigan. Another flight number change, AWI 7428, took the family back to Colorado. Using the same techniques we'd used to find other planes, we found it and recorded it too. Roughly 9 hours after they boarded the plane in ICE custody, Chaim El Gamal and her 5 children walked off of it. One plane, no passengers other than them. A journey halfway across the country and then back ended with a brief moment of thanks.
That plane was put in Denver specifically for the El Gamal family. It was not part of a movement of people from Aurora to South Louisiana or Aurora to, to El Paso, for example. It was a plane that was sitting on the tarmac at Denver International Airport just waiting for this family.
ICE released the family within hours. As routine as another departure at another airport in another city, the planes leave hourly, daily. You might have seen them. They're not exactly hiding.
2 flights a day, leaving Youngstown in the morning, and by the end of the day, they're in Texas or Louisiana.
We started with one day.
It's not like anything I've ever seen before.
Mostly because this day we knew we could get 4 crews in 4 cities. But honestly, we could have chosen any day.
And we will begin the process of returning millions and millions of criminal aliens back to the places from which they came.
The flights move constantly.
And that is exactly what I am going to do. We will do it at a level that nobody's ever seen before.
Some will leave the U.S., many won't.
We have about an hour until the flight touches down, so.
And that's what surprised us.
Noticed a pattern that every Thursday a flight has left Phoenix.
The movements, the transfers, the shuffles often seemed random.
They had moved him to Texas, then they moved him to California, then they moved him back to Texas.
ICE tells us available space is one of the main reasons why it moves from state to state. But we found plenty of people who believe ICE has other reasons in mind.
Sometimes it's very hard to find a client. That they have a system where you can look someone up if you have their identifying number and country, but if they transfer someone, that system's not updated for days sometimes, and so it's impossible to track people.
Yet why isn't exactly the story. The fact is, it's happening. Tomorrow, it will happen again. Maybe that's why in the end we realized even the airplanes we found aren't the story. They just simply led us to it.
Following a flight that I believe is headed to Denver.
In early 2026, we started with a guess. Educated, yes, but a guess nonetheless.
This is also just trying to confirm what I believe to be true.
Could we find ICE air operations simply by going to Denver International Airport?
Largely, I think people are unaware of how often these flights are actually occurring.
That's our producer and photojournalist Chris Hansen on a search for VXP-52. Right around the same time.
There is a flight taking off out of Texas.
Investigative producer Kelly Dietz found herself.
And we believe that this flight will be touching down an MSP.
In Minneapolis, trying to find another plane. If our work was correct, if we in fact had learned how to find the planes used by ICE air operations.
We are at the upper deck.
Then we would be able to get video of not just the planes.
So that is Tyson 46.
But video of the operations as well. In this case, detainees boarding. This is how we turned our educated guess.
The plane came, stopped here.
Into something more.
And now they're going up and boarding the plane.
We started with data, a lot of it, 1.5 million lines to be exact. Every flight in and out of Denver International. From there, we looked for patterns, flights headed to places with large detention centers nearby. And within the flight numbers, we found more patterns. Some led to ICE flights, others led to simple, ordinary charter flights used by sports teams, for example. We didn't want those.
Yep, that's it.
As we learned more, we encourage other reporters and photojournalists in other cities to put our work to the test, see if they too could find the flights. And sure enough, every time they looked, they found one. And while the flight records told us where the planes went, they didn't tell us who was on them. So we built another database of all habeas petitions filed in Colorado and Minnesota since the start of 2024. Within the filings, we found the stories.
A las 3 de la mañana y luego nos movieron hasta Key West y un sábado nos movieron a Ligueiro, Alcatraz.
This is how we investigated a system designed to move people faster than most could follow. Chances are the next time you see one of the planes, you'll now know what we know.